All right, welcome everybody. So today we are going to talk about redefining freedom. Redefining freedom in this lens of visionary leadership. So as we gather here on this day, when the United States of America celebrates its independence, I want to invite us into a deeper layer of the word freedom. Most of us have inherited the idea that freedom means freedom from. Freedom from. Freedom from oppression. Freedom from control. Freedom from tyranny. From someone else calling the shots. And yes, those freedoms do matter. But there is another kind of freedom that aligns with our frame of visionary leadership. And that is freedom to. Freedom to. As we've been speaking about in this space over the past couple of weeks, there is a level of consciousness that we call Teal. And the Teal organization model that we've been exploring also asks us to evolve not only into a new perspective of what it means to lead from a higher state of consciousness, it also asks us to evolve into a new relationship with freedom. Not just freedom from the old, but freedom to be whole. Freedom to be whole. Freedom to evolve. And this becomes a sacred pivot from rebellion to alignment, from resistance to presence. When viewed this way, leadership is no longer a burden of control. Leadership becomes a stewardship of emergence. This means as leaders, we shift from this frame of it's up to us to run things, and we move into an upgraded frame where we realize that it's up to us to midwife things, to steward emergence. And so this brings me to a quote that I'd like to offer as a compass for this call. And I'm going to take notes in the chat as usual. So I'm going to go ahead and drop this quote in the chat. And the quote goes like this: "You are not free when you escape control. You are free when you become a vessel for purpose." I'm going to read that again. You are not free when you escape control. You are free when you become a vessel for purpose. So I'm inviting you to feel into this for a moment. What story have you been carrying about leadership? About success, pressure, control, that you are now ready to be free from? Okay, so this is our first chat prompt. This is going to be interactive as always in the chat. Consider this and maybe drop a couple of words or a sentence or two just to align with the theme here. You can do a stream of consciousness, whatever this provokes for you. I'm freeing myself from the story that I must, ... Go ahead and fill that in. I'm freeing myself from the story that I must This is your personal declaration of independence. But it's coming from alignment and not rebellion. I'm freeing myself from the story that I must run, that I must struggle, that I must always be turned on, that I must exercise control in order to lead. I'm freeing myself from the story that I must get it right, be perfect, do it alone, bask in certainty before acting. I'm freeing myself from the story that others will not get things or understand, or that I must fix others. Wow, these are powerful shares. You all just came ready to bring it, huh? I think it was that intro music got us warmed up. Oh, that's powerful. These are powerful declarations, personal declarations of independence. Okay, so beautiful. Thank you for sharing this truth. And now let's take this liberated energy with us into a deeper layer. Okay, so we're going to deepen the lens today by looking again at teal. And if you're not familiar with that word, just understand it's an emerging structure of organizations based on a higher level of consciousness. As humanity evolves, the way that we organize ourselves and lead ourselves evolves. So if you haven't caught the earlier talks about visionary leadership and teal in particular, you can always go back and review those, but really just understand it's a higher consciousness perspective of organization. So today we're going to look again at teal, but we're going to consider it not just as a stage of organization, but also as a spiritual architecture. So a lot of people hear about teal organizations and they misunderstand it. They hear about this new model of organization and they think, wait, no bosses? No hierarchy? Isn't that just chaos? But here's the thing. Teal isn't the absence of structure. It is the presence of a different kind of structure. In teal organizations, the structure is founded on sovereignty. It's a sovereign structure. It doesn't exist to control. It exists to liberate. Now, this means that roles may shift and titles may dissolve. And in that void, roles shifting, titles dissolved, no boss, no hierarchy of control. What becomes the real authority is alignment. That's what becomes the real authority, alignment. In this paradigm, self-management does not mean that everyone just does whatever they want. It means that everyone steps into personal responsibility. Personal responsibility. Inner listening. And then attunement with the collective. And so this shifts the frame of leadership from being top down or, the leaders are above. And it's a whole different paradigm that shifts to leadership is from within. Okay, now we've explored a couple large organizations examples of this. And if you're thinking, well, I'm not a large organization or I'm not a member of a large organization, just listen for the golden thread here, because whether you're a multinational corporation or a small business or an entrepreneur or a solopreneur or even just a conscious individual seeking to express personal sovereignty and freedom and authorship, these ideas are applicable. Okay, so example of a multinational organization would be Patagonia. We talked about that last week. Patagonia, outdoor products company. So they completely dissolved their top-down model. They said goodbye to micromanagement, to rigid org charts. But don't be fooled. This doesn't mean they're loose or flaky. Okay, this isn't, hippie children dancing in the desert. Okay, they still are disciplined. It's just in a different dimension. They're disciplined in the dimension where integrity, purpose, and presence hold the shape. Okay, I'm going to say that again because there's some nuance here. Okay, so not having discipline of top down or a boss looking over my shoulder or micromanaging my output or a rigid organizational chart, that's the old world model of discipline. Someone forcing or controlling, with rigidity. Okay, but a Teal organization, of which Patagonia is an example, is still disciplined, even though they have none of those things. But it's a discipline that holds the shape through integrity, purpose, and presence. Okay, so here's a fictional story, just an imaginal scene here that we're going to use to feel into what this looks like, practically speaking. Okay, so imagine you're walking into a weekly team meeting. And usually these team meetings begin with someone offering a performance update, a KPI review, and maybe a mild panic about falling short of goals. But today, the leader starts the meeting by asking, what is the work asking of us today? What is the work? What is this project asking of us today? And just like that, the whole room exhales. People drop out of pressure and shift into presence. The project itself is no longer a task, it's a teacher. And everyone is now listening. And from that stillness, true direction arises. And this is what Teal feels like. It's not about less leadership. It's about more awakened leadership. It's about leading from coherence, from a higher state of consciousness, where we become aware that our projects have soul, they have intelligence, and they're asking us to listen to them. Okay, so let's turn to each other now here for chat prompt number 2. Where in your life or leadership have you experienced what I just described, which is teal qualities? So here's the sentence we can use to lead in. I once felt this kind of wholeness and flow when ... Okay, so this is a prompt to remember a time when you listened to the soul of a project. Or you listened to what your work was asking of you. I invite you to share in the chat. I'm going to read a few of your shares aloud. Yes. Motherhood. Yeah. Learning to listen to the soul of the project that is motherhood. Wow, beautiful. Another share in the chat. An hour ago, we had a family meeting with our, is that 18-year-old? Yeah, I think so. Planning doggy home care while we are traveling. Everyone's input was equally respected and valued. This is an example of a home project. Brilliant, yes. These concepts apply everywhere. When you start to understand them, you can see the golden threads of visionary leadership from this level of consciousness everywhere. Another share from the chat. I once felt this kind of wholeness and flow a few times. Living on the East Coast, I used to be a wellness coach. How I showed up was how I would want to be coached. Bespoke. I showed up with coconut water for the client. Small ways to add human elements. Yes, that's listening to the soul of the work. Yeah. You know, and people that do this, I use that very broadly, humans, society, civilization, we sense the soul in the work of people who are listening to the soul of the work. And we feel naturally drawn into the orbit of these people and their projects because they represent not leadership or design from ego, but leadership and design from soul. And we feel that. They say humans in general, we buy authentic stories. We buy authentic stories, so we hear, that's why all these brands, globally, everyone is all trying to tell a brand story. And the more authentic, the better, because humans can tell, even if they don't get it with their brains, their neocortex analyzing, they can still tell when they encounter an authentic story. This is why all of the motivational speakers that travel around the world giving talks or giving, experiences to motivate or inspire audiences, they always tell authentic stories of their transformation. And this is how they inspire growth in others. Another share from the chat here says, I once felt this kind of wholeness and flow when I voluntarily started a project because it felt good and was not necessarily part of my duties. Excellent. It's an excellent example. Listening, using your intuition to guide your action. Continuing with the wellness coach share, on an energetic level, journaling an appreciation about participants of meetings before showing up. I love that as a practice. That is powerful. The times I've done that recently were just before a house meeting, and the experience is softer, more heart-opening than when I don't pre-pave in this way. I want to make this a more normal practice to myself as I move through the world. Yeah, Neville's very proud of you. That's exactly what a Neville student does, pre-paves the meetings of the day. Yes. It's imagination applied. Beautiful. Thank you all for sharing. Okay, so let's move a little bit deeper into one of the key ideas of Teal. Okay, so the key idea of Teal is that the purpose of our project, the purpose of our business, the purpose of our organization, the purpose of whatever it is that we're building, that purpose is alive. It's living. It has intelligence. It has soul. It's not something that can be a slogan etched in stone. Okay, so etched in stone implies it's frozen in time. You take your mission statement, you etch it into stone, you're freezing that mission statement in time. But that's not what purpose demands of us. Purpose is asking to be respected as a living frequency. Always evolving, always inviting us deeper. In the old paradigm, we were taught to set a goal and then march toward it. But in this new paradigm, when we're listening from within, when we realize our project is an encounter with soul, that's when we realize something sacred. Freedom isn't the final step. Freedom isn't the final step. Freedom is actually the first step. And that first step of freedom is actually a step toward devotion. I'm going to say that again because, again, there's subtleties here. There's nuance. And this is a key element of our talk today, and I really want it to land. So freedom is not the last step or the final step or the goal at the end of the project. We don't do a project to eventually get free. We must free ourselves first. And then when we free ourselves first, it becomes the first step, but that step is toward devotion. Because it's when we're free, once we're finally free, that's when we can finally listen. And when you really start listening, you realize you are not the only voice in the room. The work itself is speaking. Your project is alive. It has a soul. And this means you are now in relationship with something that is larger than your willpower. You're in a relationship with something larger than your willpower. Now, this is very contrasted with the old paradigm model of, my project, my business, my organization depends on me. I have to come up with all of the answers. I have to motivate my people or my team. I have to figure it all out. I have to set the goals and march towards them. And as I say those old paradigm phrases out loud, I can feel the weight of that. All of that is willpower, relying on willpower to make things happen, which is what the old paradigm taught us to do. But once we begin to listen to the work, when we listen to the intelligence that the project has, understanding that the project isn't asking us to control it, it's asking us to allow it to express through our work. And this is what we mean by the term evolutionary purpose. Evolutionary purpose. The evolutionary purpose that the project serves, right? Because soul desires to evolve. That's the fundamental desire of soul on a grand, vast scale, galactic scale, universal scale, at the scale of source. Source desires to evolve. And so when we start to respect the soul of our project, we begin to tune into what is the evolutionary purpose of this project. And this isn't something that we write and post on a wall. It's something we tune into by listening. We wake up and ask, what wants to emerge through me today? What wants to emerge through me today? This does not just apply to organizations. It applies to you. You're not a machine asking to be optimized. You are a living system being stewarded by your soul. And so this leads to new questions. An example of a new question is, what if your leadership is not about dominating the future, but about midwifing what wants to be born? Okay, take a breath with me. Here comes chat prompt number 3. What is your soul asking you to lead from now? Okay, so the starter sentence here is, I think my work's deeper purpose is beginning to reveal itself through ... My work's deeper purpose is beginning to reveal itself through Now, this is something, if you brought your journal today, this might be one to jot down and reflect on and give some space, right? But also, if you feel something bubbling up and you desire to share in the chat, go ahead and share it. So I'll share what this question brings up for me. So I think my work's deeper purpose is beginning to reveal itself through asking me to slow down just a little bit. To slow down just a little bit and to listen more. It's so easy to wake up in the morning and look at your task list and then be like, all right, let's do it. And just like get down to business. And that's work ethic. That's something we've been taught to honor and venerate, and it serves its purpose. But I think there's also, at least for me, what I'm feeling in this moment is there's also the soul of my projects is asking me to slow down and listen more. And maybe some of those things on the task list, are old. Maybe they're no longer pertinent. So rather than just blindly doing because I can slow down and ask. I'm going to share something from the chat here. I'm seeing purpose stares you in the face, waiting patiently for you to see it. Sounds like my cat when she's hungry. Freedom is noticing, and in the noticing, purpose evolves. Yes. Seems myself is asking me to notice. I'm just chuckling about that cat comment. That's exactly what she does. She just sits there and stares until I notice her. It's like purpose. My work's deeper purpose is beginning to reveal itself by asking me to get into my body more so I can listen better. Oh, yeah. Releasing expectation based on past stories with the group. Another share. My soul comes alive when I read out loud. So I have been reading audiobooks for YouTube. And I have noticed these texts are sinking in deeper as I read them aloud. But slowing down while reading has made a real shift for me. Yeah, be a cat. Yes. Another share from the chat. My work's deeper purpose is asking me to know well my own presence. What has come through after some contemplation is that I have to look at my mystical map more often because it is a spiral. I've heard you say that term mystical map before, and I love that term, and I intuitively can see it, in my mind's eye, a mystical map. But I'm curious, is it physical or digital or imaginal when you say, look at my mystical map? And I'm curious, could it take physical or digital form? I made it with my mirror after a daily prompt. This comes from a Brave Mystic. So the daily prompt from Brave Mystic training. Yes, and the mirror refers to using a chat tool in a specific configuration to map mystic ideas. Beautiful. That's awesome. I'd love to know more about the structure of that. I think, I'm curious whatever you're willing to share. Okay, more coming from the chat here. My work's deeper purpose is asking me to, above all, ensure my nervous system stays nourished and sovereign. My work's deeper purpose is asking me to, above all, ensure my nervous system stays nourished and sovereign. Yes. So when I hear that, I immediately think of the concept of antenna. Right. So you will be able to hear your work's deeper purpose when you are in that state of self-care, which is nourished, sovereign, hydrated, right? Structured. That's beautiful. So, Joseph, I'm going to post in the forum notes from this call. And I feel like from organizing threads perspective, if you are open to share, that would be a place for everyone to go and see more about the mystical map. So I'm going to do that right after this call. And if you're willing to share, that'd be beautiful. Cool. Okay. So today was really about getting clear on this declaration of personal independence and recognizing the soul of our work, taking that idea a little bit further. We explored a new definition of freedom, not as escape from, but freedom to be a steward of purpose. Okay, so this is from rebellion, right? So we fought for freedom in 1776. Freedom from, right? It was a rebellion. And now we have won the freedom to come into alignment and to be stewards of purpose. We also talked a little bit about the sacred structure of Teal organizations, which is distributed, decentralized leadership through inner alignment. And we spoke a little bit more about the path of evolutionary purpose, where your soul and your work are not separate, but rather a single living whole, to be honored, to be listened to be collaborated and partnered with in a sacred relationship. Now, this isn't just theory. This is an invitation for how we meet our projects, how we meet, view, and interact with our teams, and how we live our lives. Okay, so I will leave you with this. You are not here to run a business. You are here to relate to a living system. Your work is not a machine. It is a mystery in motion. And your leadership begins every time you pause and breathe and listen for what wants to emerge. Okay, so if something stirred in you today, don't let it slip away. Find some space over this long weekend to sit with your journal or your mystical map and to consider what has been provoked here. Listen a little deeper and learn. And we'll continue to gather here Fridays, 3 p.m. Eastern. So come back, bring your questions, your projects, your presence. Because after all, we are building the future. It's up to us now. We get to be the stewards of emergence through resonance, remembrance, and co-creation. Thank you for being here. You could have chosen distraction, and instead you chose evolution, and I commend you for that. Have a great weekend, everyone, and we'll see you next time.